Now to questions to members. Number one, in the name of Ian Lees-Galloway.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the member in charge of the Social Security Pathway to Work Amendment Bill. Why did she draft the Social Security Pathway to Work Amendment Bill?
Carmel Sepuloni.
Mr Speaker, I drafted this bill because I belong to a political party, Labour, which believes in creating viable pathways for New Zealanders off benefits and into work. Mr Speaker, this bill strikes at the heart of what Labour stands for, and that is jobs, that is jobs, that is jobs.
Order. Thank you. Supplementary question, Ian Lees-Galloway.
To the member, what evidence has she seen that her bill is necessary?
Carmel Sepuloni.
The major evidence can be seen in the government's employment programs that are failing. The number of people participating in MSD's employment programs has dropped by 60% since 2011-2012. The number of people returning to a main benefit 8 weeks after end of employment contract has increased from 15 to 23%. For the year ending September 2015, less than half of job seeker benefits were cancelled for the reason being obtained work. And in the last 3 months...
Answers to these questions are to be brief. No, the members had an opportunity to wrap it up. Point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, I went back and, because I suspected this issue may well come up, and I timed the average length of a ministerial answer to a government question, which was 30 seconds.
I'm not interested. Not interested at all in this point of order. When we have questions to members, there are quite different standards for those compared with questions to ministers. This is not a chance for a party political broadcast. I listened to the answer for quite long enough. The answer has been addressed. That is the end of the matter.
Mr Speaker.
Is the member...
Fresh point of order, Mr Speaker.
Fresh point of order. I'm delighted to hear it.
Mr Speaker, I wonder if you could point out which of the standing orders you're referring to in making that ruling.
No, I can't, but I will come back to the member. Order. When I'm on my feet, the member is to be silent. I will come back and refer him to Speaker's rulings that will help. I'll come back to the member with that. Point of order. Can I just again clarify, is this a fresh point?
I'm trying to...
No, I don't need assistance. I need to know where... Order. Member will also resume his seat. If the member attempts to relitigate where we just covered, I'll be asking the member to leave the chamber for the rest of the afternoon. If he wants to raise a fresh point of order, I'm only too happy to hear it.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Fresh point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker, perhaps you could provide clarification as to whether there is a difference between members when there is a question to members asking a question about a bill that is before the House, which I would have thought is an issue on which this House would want substantive answers, and other procedural matters. These are questions that go to substance.
The member is now relitigating exactly where we've been, and that explanation has already... The member might find it amusing. I don't think it is. I have already taken time. If the member goes back and has a look at previous comments I've made, I see quite a substantial difference between ministers to questions and ministers to answer, questions such as this, which are to members who have legislation about to come to the floor of this House. I accept they are allowed under standing orders. I have said in this House before, I think the value of that exercise is questionable. Question number 2, Suma. Can I again just clarify? No, that's relitigating it. If the member wants to relitigate it, I'll be asking him to leave the chamber. But if he wants to... Order. I've made a decision. If the member wants to relitigate it, he can certainly do so, but I will be asking him to leave the chamber. I've made a decision. The member doesn't have to agree with my decision, but he must accept it. Does the member wish to raise a point of order? Question number 2.